guilt, shame. No one's going to want me. How would I ever disclose to anybody? I don't want to even have that conversation. And well, if this is the best I'm going to get, I might as well stay with it.
Hey there. Welcome to another episode of Carve Your Own Fucking Path, a podcast made to inspire you to create a life and business on your own terms. You'll hear candid interviews with people who have boldly decided to blaze their own trail, and the occasional solo show with me, your host. I'm Willa McDonough, on-camera coach, storyteller, and remote video producer. 5 years ago, I moved from my home base of San Francisco to the coast of Portugal, taking a big leap into the unknown. Some called it courageous. I called it carving my own fucking path. Today, I live in Lisbon and run a business that elevates your online presence, helping you show up confidently on camera to create videos that showcase your brand and personality so you can get more visibility and attract clients by being yourself. If you're just starting out in business or you've been doing it for a while, you're sure to pick up tidbits of actionable advice and hopefully feel inspired by stories from people who have chosen the unconventional and sometimes messy path. And if you've been waiting for a sign to start carving your own fucking path, this is it. I'm so happy you're here. Welcome to the podcast, Alexandra.
I'm excited.
Thank you so much for being here. You have quite a story, and I want to just commend you first off for doing this work. And of course, we'll dive right in, but I just want to say that it takes a lot of courage and guts to do what you're doing.
Thank you. Yeah. Well, it's about getting the information out there so that people don't feel the same way I did when I was first diagnosed. Yeah.
Yes. So you, just a little snapshot, you were diagnosed with herpes. I don't know how long ago, but you were diagnosed, and it was, of course, a devastating blow to your life. And taking that, you now have this organization that is called Life With Herpes, and your mission is to break down the stigma,
right,
and remove the shame, help others, support others by offering educational content, wellness products. You have a podcast, you have a YouTube, Instagram. So you are just putting your face, your story out there as okay, life goes on. And
exactly. Yeah, I was diagnosed with oral herpes in 2003. And then I was diagnosed with genital herpes in 2011. And both experiences were completely different. Getting oral herpes was like, you're like, oh, that's unfortunate. But you're not, I remember I cried about it because I was in pain, but that was it. It was like, oh, okay. Everyone has it. It's fine. It's not the bad kind. Everyone has it, whatever. Like, you can't really avoid it. Okay, cool. Went on with my life. I had my first, I got it in 2003, and I had my second outbreak in 2017. So it wasn't even a big deal in my life. Like, I didn't even experience it. Getting genital herpes in 2011 was completely different. And it's because of the sexual taboo, or this like being, you add on these extra layers of preconceived notions about someone who has genital herpes because of sex. Oh, well, you know why they got it, or you know what they were doing, or you know who they dated, or like, that person, well, we always knew he was slimy, or whatever it is. We all have our own preconceived notions. So that was the worst part.
Okay. Yeah. My understanding was that you could only get one, that you couldn't get, you had one or the other.
Typically, yes. Most people do get one. So there are two types, like type 1 and type 2, and the viral DNA is slightly different. And so most of the times our immune system will pick it up and be like, oh, that's herpes. She already has that. Fine, whatever. So that's why most people have HSV1, so they don't pick up HSV2. But in my case, my immune system was weak at that time. I was on antibiotics, and I had yeast infections, and I had bacterial vaginosis. I had all that going on. And so my body was like, we'll just give her herpes too. Yeah.
Add this on. Okay.
Just throw it in there.
Yes. And you threw out some things that I'm familiar with for sure as women. And I think the more we talk about this stuff, the better, because it can feel very lonely, very much. I'm like, my life's over. So going back, I just curious because now, your mission is like, very
Right.
clear. Take us back
Right.
before all of this. Like, what path were you on before this 2003 or 2011 diagnosis?
Yeah. So in 2003, I was 20. I was in college. So I was like, I was just in college. And the interesting thing about being diagnosed with herpes in 2003, I said I was 20 and I went on a date and my date kissed me and he had a cold sore. And at that point, like at 20, that was a big deal to still, like I was still that innocent. Obviously I'd been kissed and then I had boyfriends and things like that. But like we went on one date and you're just going to kiss me. Like that was a big deal to me at that point. So, but moving through in 2011, I was, I was in the mortgage business. I thought, had a career. I was dating. I was trying to figure out who, what, and I was dating somebody and he didn't know he had it.
Which most people don't.
I was 28 years old, 27, 28 years old. Yeah.
Okay. And you get the diagnosis. Was it, so this person that your partner did not know, never had a physical, let's say, manifestation of it. So there was no way to tell. Right. What was your understanding of it at that point?
So it's very interesting. So in high school, I was a peer educator for Planned Parenthood. So Planned Parenthood came into my high school and they handpicked certain people to do community service and they educated us. And so we had to pass tests and exams and routinely, not physical, but like actual academic exams. And so we had to know it. So I knew about anatomy, physiology. I knew about STIs, STDs, and I knew about birth control. Like I was an expert in it. I knew it. So I knew how you got herpes. I knew how common it was. I knew how common other STIs were. I knew that they could be asymptomatic. I knew that, yet I still believed it would never happen to me because I was dating one person. Like I routinely got checked. He said he was getting checked. Like, okay, cool. Like we both got checked. You get it from people that sleep with multiple partners. This was my thought, and it's not accurate. You can have two people that are virgins and get married, and one person has oral herpes, and then you end up getting it genitally from your partner.
And the other thing is they don't check. We don't get it checked unless there's something to see. And that's the other thing is it's so common,
right?
That again, people are not going in and getting, and then, So I have some experience with this. So I that's why I know some things about it. Like, well, wait, you're not going to check, but why not? And then, it's like, you have to push for it big time.
And it's frustrating. And I knew that again, because I was an educator. I did know that. And so I always said, I want to be tested for herpes. But partners don't know that. And you have to tell them. And then it gets weird and like, well, why are you, it gets a weird conversation. But no, there's a lot of the medical field, a lot of people in the medical field and different countries as well. I've talked to people in Australia, for example, or people in Europe, depending on their country. They're like, no, we don't test unless you actually have a visible lesion. So even if you are being responsible and saying like, hey, I want to know, I just want to be responsible. They're not testing, which is unfortunate.
Yes, it is. Okay. So diagnosis, life is over, dreams, goals, over.
And I wasn't sure about the guy, like you're dating. And I wasn't sure. And I was like, well, I don't know. I'll try it. And then I was like, oh my gosh, I have to stay with him now because we both have herpes. I have to. So I stayed with him for 2 years and it was miserable.
So the relationship was not good in general. This just kind of added a bit of a handcuff situation. Sounds like, okay, this is, now we're going to be in this together. Do you
I made my bed, so I'll sleep in it, basically. So
you were full of like shame, yourself, guilt, shame.
No one's going to want me. How would I ever disclose to anybody? I don't want to even have that conversation.
Mm-hmm.
And well, if this is the best I'm going to get, I might as well stay with it.
Where
All
did
those things.
where did those ideas come from? You know?
Probably society telling you that you're a dirty person. You're bad. Nobody's going to want to date you with STDs because
Mm-hmm.
ew.
Right.
You
Had
know?
you ever worked with someone going back to your days when you were working with Planned Parenthood? Did you ever coach or work with anyone that had herpes and you were telling them it's going to be okay? Had you been on
No,
that side?
because they were high school students.
Mm,
Um, and I'm not saying high school students don't have herpes, but I'm saying that
right.
I went into the classroom and taught for a day, and that was it. Like
Okay.
I just,
Got it.
yeah.
I
And
didn't
so
know if
they
you
were high
were.
school
Yeah.
students. Yeah.
Okay.
I was in high school and they were in high school. So it was actually a really good program because you don't want the like old person that you're like, you've never had sex. Come tell me
Or you
about
haven't
this
had it for 20 years.
20 years. Right. So let's
Yeah.
send the other 16-year-old in here and
Mhm.
talk about it. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. That's an interesting position to be in. I'm
Mm-hmm.
sure, because you're coming from like I'm one of you, but I have a bit more knowledge.
Mm-hmm.
And it is quite different than reading it in a textbook or reading, the stats and then actually experiencing that because of all
Mm-hmm.
the emotions and the shame. So do you have a moment when you decided like, fuck it, I'm going to carve my own path?
So I was turning 30 and that's a big, it was like a big
Big
deal.
one.
And yeah, it was. And it
Mm-hmm.
was, at that point, so I had a great career, but I was struggling because when one thing's off, the other things are off too. Everything, it, you can't juggle it, you can't balance it. So I was struggling with my career. Um, I had to move home because I got into debt. So I'm, 28, 29 years old now, living at home, dating someone I don't want to date. Um, I was binge eating. So I thought, being a teenager in the 90s, it was that whole like grunge, like
Mm-hmm.
that like sunken in heroin look. And so that's, I kind of like went through that and I thought, well, that's the only way you can stay thin. And I realized, okay, I got to get this shit together because I'm turning
Mm-hmm.
30 and I want to get married. I don't know if I didn't know if I wanted to be a mom, but I was like, I want those options and I need to figure this out. So I started on this like self-love journey and I, read things. I signed up for classes. And this is, again, we have to remember 2011, 2000. So in 2012, I turned 30. Um, so remember, Facebook was kind of the big jam. Instagram really wasn't out. Zoom didn't exist. It was GoToMeeting, but people weren't doing GoToMeetings. So like, I had to like buy CDs. I'd listen to them in my car
Mm-hmm.
or I'd sign up for webinars, and then I would like record it and I would listen to it over and over and over in my car. So that it was definitely more difficult. It wasn't as pronounced as it is now. You just go on Instagram or whatever your social media pick is, and you can find somebody that is going through it or has been through it or can support you. So it was definitely a difficult channel, but I did not want to turn 30 and be in the same position. I didn't want to
Mm-hmm.
be a victim to herpes.
Okay.
And I looked at it, knowing the statistics, 2 out of 3 people have HSV1. 1 out of 6 can be sometimes 1 out of 5, depending on where you research it, have HSV2. How are they going about their lives? They still marry the person of their dreams. They have careers of their choice. Like they're still doing those things. And how come I can't?
Mm-hmm.
So I had to get my ducks in a row.
Okay. So you're living at home.
Yeah.
You're like,
Dating that guy.
Get dating that guy. Something's got to change. Physically, just curious, were you uncomfortable? Did you have symptoms that were like debilitating? Oh, you did. Okay. Got it.
My first outbreak was miserable. You couldn't sit down. It was in the summer. It was 4th of July weekend. So like I wore those maxi dresses. Jeans were not an option. It was Armageddon basically everywhere.
Mm. So yeah, that's a whole different experience than getting a diagnosis, not having really any symptoms. But you have had, okay, really bad.
Yeah, I was in so much pain, and I continually got outbreaks afterwards because I mentioned, I had yeast infections and BV, and like I had awful acne at this point. So there was like a trickle effect going on in my body that it was like, you got to change something. So let's figure this out.
Okay. For you, sharing your story with the world, what is your biggest why for that?
So that nobody else feels isolated and destructive in their life. I've talked to thousands of people, and I've talked to people that have said, I pulled out of school because I didn't want anyone at school to know. I talked to this one woman, she is in the Air Force, an officer. She and her husband, they have children. They wanted to adopt a child. And so they were going through the process, and they pulled out because on the application, and it's like years of applications, and they pulled out because there was a question on STIs. And she's like, well, and I should maybe pull out of the Air Force. I'm like, no. I've talked to people that didn't have children because they thought this. I've talked to people that are parents but never got in the pool with their kids. All these things that you're like, that's not fair to you, and that's not fair to the people that you love. And I just don't want people to feel like they have to sacrifice or settle or give something up because they feel like they're being punished, or feel alone. Because that diagnosis period is, I call it the Eeyore phase. We all know Eeyore. He has the rain cloud over him 24/7 and Winnie the Pooh. And like, you don't need to be an Eeyore. Yes, you need to grieve, but we don't need to go through life being an Eeyore. And you can really change and become more confident and change your lifestyle and get healthier and things like that. So there's a lot of positive things.
Definitely. How was it sharing your story for the first time? And
Terrifying.
Who was that with?
Terrifying. Terrifying. I had a podcast, and I was asked to speak at a podcast conference in Florida in 2017. And the topic I was asked to speak on was like self-worth, self-respect, self-love, and how that really plays a role into your business. And so I was going to talk about getting into debt. And my husband at the time was my boyfriend, was like, okay, no big, like, Alexandra, everyone at 25 gets into debt. Like, it's just no big deal anymore. Even it wasn't like that big of debt. Like it seemed like instrumental, like it seems like something you could never pay off at 25, but like, come on, So he goes, you should talk about having herpes. And I was like, there's no way. There's no way. I'm not going to do that. And he's like, well, I think it would really help you, and it would help the community. It would help these people. And so I got up on stage and did that.
Wow. So you didn't start speaking about this until 2017.
Right.
Okay. Was that a turning point, that like speaking in that public way? Did you have people coming up afterwards and saying, oh my God, thank you
yes
so much?
So that's what I learned. I learned that a couple of things happen when you share something extremely vulnerable on stage. Number one, people pay attention.
Yeah.
They stop texting or whatever. They're like, whoa. So from a leadership or speaking, that's a good thing. It allows you to connect. So they go, wow, like she's human, or there's humility, or she's been through something. Cause it's so easy to look at somebody and be like, well, you don't get it. You don't really know. You haven't walked in my shoes. So it creates that. And, the people that did have herpes in that room came up to me and they're like, I have this and I've never shared it. And wow, thank you for that. So it also allowed other people, maybe it's not herpes, but maybe it's an issue with alcohol. Maybe it was a rape. Maybe it was drugs. Maybe all these things in our life that cause trauma that we hide because we're like, well, I don't want anyone to know this. I don't want anyone to know that I went through this because they might judge me. It allows us to be more authentic on who we are.
Yes, definitely. Where do you think the stigma came from with this extremely common STI, STD? It
came from the pharmaceutical companies. So herpes. So I actually I called a professor, could have been a scientist, from the Salk Institute at University of California, San Diego. And so I called him to ask, he was a viral scientist for HIV and HSV. So he was like stoked to get a phone call because like who actually wants to talk about herpes, you know? So,
I do.
right. But like, so I called him and he said, every living vertebrate has herpes.
Oh.
It's part of living. And so, cause I was like, who's the asshole? Who's the asshole that like started
Who
it?
started this?
Who started this? You know, like who can we blame? And he's like, there's no one. It's part of living. It's here. Everybody has it. Everybody's exposed to it. You may not actually manifest it. You may not actually, get to the point of getting herpes, but like, again, dogs have it, cats have it, dolphins have it.
Oh my God.
Like koala bears have it. So it's here and it's just part of living. So back to who started the stigma. So, in the late 70s, early 80s, they developed Valtrex. And so Valtrex is the antiviral that can help keep the herpes virus suppressed, and it can help prevent outbreaks and helps with preventing transmission. And so they needed a reason to sell it, because why have people been living for decades without it and they're fine? And now they suddenly need it. So they created the stigma around genital herpes and they advertised it towards genital herpes, leaving the oral herpes people like, oh, you're fine. That's normal. That's
a cold sore. Even another name.
Everybody. Right. Another name.
Yeah.
Genital herpes, you're the bad one. You need a medication because you need to you need to punish yourself. And now you have to take a medication for the rest of your life was their message. That's what it was.
It's crazy.
And on that, it's so interesting. So, since then, we remember the HIV AIDS not pandemic, but epidemic starting in the 80s and 90s when it was really big and scary and people didn't know. And that was never advertised as a bad thing. It was advertised as like humanity. Let's fix this together. Let's do walks. Let's fight this. You have Princess Diana Princess Diana holding people, holding their hands while they pass, like things like that. There were movies made about it. It was, how do we solve this for humanity? HPV, human papillomavirus, that's been around for eons as well. But it wasn't discussed. I never discussed it being an educator for Planned Parenthood. It wasn't discussed as an STD. It wasn't even discussed, but not until the vaccine came out in about 2099, 2001, then it was like, hey, let's get this together. Let's protect each other. So it's all marketing.
So true. God damn it.
Yeah.
All marketing. And that's all the marketing thing. Stigma.
Genius marketing.
Yeah, exactly. But this fear, because I've seen people with fear in their eyes, like, wait, this thing that is, and a part of it, I think, is because it doesn't go away. Technically, I think that's potentially why, because the other ones, you pop a pill, chlamydia, gonorrhea, whatever, it's gone.
Antibiotic and it's fine. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think that is the other thing. So your organization, Life with Herpes, it's living with it, because that's the thing, is it may not go away, may not, show up necessarily, but there's a way forward. So I'm just curious, and like health-wise for you, has it gotten better, or is it something that you still have to manage?
So oral herpes, that's never been an issue in my life. I got my second outbreak right before my wedding. Like, great. Awesome. Yeah. Like, didn't even know I got outbreaks orally. And genitally, there are seasons in my life where I will have more outbreaks than others. And I like to use that as an opportunity to say, okay, what else is going on in my body? Am I deficient in other vitamins? Am I stressed? Am I this last fall, we were in between homes. We were living in Costa Rica, which was great because we were amazing. It was awesome. Like, nothing wrong with that. But it's not you were renting, and then we were waiting for our home in Las Vegas to be done. And I had too many beds, too many. I have a toddler. I had lots of outbreaks, I was stressed.
Stress change. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And so again, it's just an opportunity for you to look at, okay, what's going on?
Mm-hmm. It's true. That's the most important thing is to look at, why is this showing up? It's always a sign of something else, underneath the surface. So did you ever envision that you would be in such a public way and speaking on like just this big kind of scale and being the face? No. Yeah.
Never.
Never.
My best friend, at the time that I mean, she still is my best friend, but at the time I called her, right? I don't know if she called me or I called her right after the doctor. And I remember she said to me then, like, Alexandra, you're a fighter and you need to go public about this. But I was like, no way. Like, absolutely not. There's no way. Like, and again, 2011, this didn't exist. Podcasts were around, but who listened to podcasts? Nobody. Like, it wasn't a thing.
Mm-hmm. And social media, you're right. It was such infancy at that point. And the highlight reel. I mean, there was no vulnerability going on social media.
No. And really not until the last couple, like 2 years, maybe since 2020. It's cool to be vulnerable. It's cool to be like, let's talk about it. That's new. Even the last couple of years.
Because I think Instagram changed it, as in perfection became the norm and what people strived for. And then now it's swinging back. It's fascinating, but also an amazing time to be yourself, be your authentic self,
right?
Share your story, because as you know, and as you are showing by doing what you're doing, is that when you do that, it becomes the vehicle to help so many other people.
Right.
So I want to commend you for that again, because
thank you.
That's the thing, is like you're putting yourself out there, but at such a, for a greater cause. And I feel like that's the biggest message for people.
And I would take that, and people listening may not have herpes and may not ever, or they may, or whatever. You may never want to go public with something, but whatever you do. So I talk to people like, when you're disclosing, and they're like, well, how should I disclose? When should I disclose? When I talk to them about other things, you have to go to your why. Why am I doing this? And you have to be crystal clear on your why. Because if it goes south or doesn't go as planned, or you disclose to the person that you're like, I am infatuated with this person, and they call you names or kick you out of their house or whatever, you have to go back to your why. I decided to do this. And then you're crystal clear. It still hurts, but then you're not teeter-tottering.
Right. So getting clear. So your why. So segueing in. So then dating with herpes.
Yeah.
What does that look like?
How is that? Yeah.
Yeah.
So I was turning 30 and I was with the guy, and I was like, I moved, I got, my own apartment again. And I thought, okay, I can't be doing this. And I decided, so one of the things I realized that we had this idea of who we're going to date, and anybody else that comes in is like, absolutely not.
Yeah.
And I say, that's wrong, because anytime you go out with somebody, you learn something either about that person that's a quality that you really like, and like, wow, that's a quality I wasn't looking at, and I want that in my future partner. Or you learn a quality about yourself. Something they do agitates you or doesn't, or whatever. And so I decided that I would date anybody that asked me out. I would go on a date.
Okay.
Date doesn't mean sleeping. It means you want to go for ice cream? Let's go get ice cream. You want to go for a walk on the beach? Sure, I'll go for a walk on the beach. You want to go to dinner? I'll go to dinner. It didn't mean going back to their place. It didn't even mean there was a second date. It meant I will learn and open up, and if you're, for every action, there's an opposite and equal reaction. So if I'm saying no, 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 but I really want to date and I want to find that person, I'm saying no. So my opposite reaction is going to be, well, I'm not going to send you anybody.
Right. Yeah. The universe. You have to be ready. Were you online?
No, I tried it. So it was so funny. I went to do it, and I don't know which one I picked. And I was on my iPad. I went back to my parents' house. I didn't have Wi-Fi yet at my apartment. So I went back to my parents' house to like fill it out on my iPad. And I moved from the kitchen to another room in the house. And we had different Wi-Fi's at that point. Like the room switched, and so as I'm moving through the house, the Wi-Fi gets disconnected. And then this error comes up as I'm only like one page into the application. And it's like, we have no prospects for you. And I was like,
sorry.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. Maybe this isn't the
like
way to date. Yeah, it was a glitch, but I was like, oh, I'll take that as a sign.
Yep.
I won't do that. So no.
You didn't miss anything.
Yeah. Right.
Okay. So you're just now you're open to different people.
Yeah.
Coming in. And so what starts happening?
I start learning, I start enjoying it. I start realizing like, oh, this was something that I thought was really interesting or a characteristic I really thought I needed. And I went out with that person and I don't need that characteristic, whatever it was. But as far as disclosing, that's the big thing is when do I disclose? How do I disclose? Do I need to disclose if I go on a date? Is that fair to the person to say, am I wasting their time? Which you're not. I would use it a lot of times to get out of sex or to get out of the second or third date. I'd be like, oh, I don't want to tell him that I really don't like him for whatever reason. And I'll just be like, oh, I have herpes. And a lot of times it would take care of it. And a lot of times it didn't. They're like, it's okay. It's cool.
Like, plan B.
Damn it.
What's my plan B?
Yeah. Plan B. So
being honest. Well, that takes a lot of guts in that situation. Because, and why is it so uncomfortable? I still don't understand. Because if you're willing to do that with someone, have sex with someone, how can you not have a conversation about your history? Do you have any insight on that? Like, why is it so difficult?
Well, I use the analogy, like if you're at a bar, you would never, or a restaurant or whatever, you would never walk up to someone eating a burger at the bar and have a bite of their burger. You wouldn't be like, oh, I don't know you, but like, can I have a bite of your burger? You just wouldn't, maybe you'd have a French fry, but you would never like take the burger and bite it. Yet we won't know somebody. We'll meet them at a bar and go have sex with them.
Yeah.
And if we're not having sex because we don't have a condom, let's say, you're like, oh, I want to be safe. We'll just have oral sex. And I'm like, again, you would never eat their burger, but you'll do this. It's like.
Yeah, that's a good analogy.
Yeah. Why are we doing that? I just think that there is this whole phase of like casual sex and it's normal and that's what we should do. And it's the cool thing. And and there's nothing wrong with that. If that's your lifestyle and that's what you want to do, absolutely. It just requires a conversation and that's it. Conversation. Or if you don't want to have the conversation, then be prepared to end up with like, oh, something doesn't feel right down there. I wonder why,
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes. Take responsibility.
Take responsibility.
For something happens. When did you start disclosing? Was it just curious if there was in your mind?
Date 3 or whatever.
Okay.
No, it was whenever, if I felt that the relationship was going to go somewhere and there was somebody I wanted to date, it was more than just getting ice creams on Thursday nights. And it went to like, let's go to dinner. And you're like, oh, that whole thing. Then that's when I disclosed. Casual sex wasn't my thing. So that wasn't it. It was when I wanted to have a relationship with this person. And with that being said, like there was a guy I dated after, and we dated for like 2 years, but we went on like vacation together and didn't sleep together. Like we were still dating. Like we went to LA for the weekend and we didn't have sex. Like we didn't. So don't ever feel like, oh my gosh, we're going on vacation and it's going to be assumed that I have to do this and I have herpes, or it's a long distance and it's assumed if he flies me out to Wisconsin or wherever we're going that I have to no, you don't have to do anything. It's really important, I think, that we set our own boundaries of what we want and what we don't want. If you're like, no, my intention of going on this vacation is to have sex, great.
Right.
Then awesome.
But don't feel pressured.
Yeah. and have that conversation. Is it important to you to communicate about sexual health, or is it not important to you? Do you think that we should use protection like latex condoms or not? Whatever works for you. And then follow through. If your hard line is like, no, we have to use a condom, and the partner's like, yeah, I don't really like condoms, or I'm allergic, or da 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 da, then that needs to be your hard line. It's like, you know what? Then we're not going to do this. We're going to go get tested, or we're going to have further conversations, or whatever it is.
Right.
But not just like give in.
That's a big one. That's a whole other podcast.
Hard. Yeah.
I think in general, because of again, certain cultural things, expectations, especially as women, it's much harder. And I think because it kind of falls on us a lot of the time.
Yeah.
To be
but the responsible one.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it usually falls down to birth control, but and that's really the concern for most people is birth control, birth control, birth control.
Right.
Nobody really asks about STDs.
It's true.
Yeah.
Yeah. Good point. And you are now married with a child. So how did that go? So like your story, let's say meeting your husband.
It's a fun story. So my husband actually was my colleague. And so when I got diagnosed with herpes in 2011, it was the Friday before 4th of July. And so no one's like, you're kind of working, but not working. I was in sales. So I was out meeting with people. And so I come back into the office and I was like ghost white. You can just tell something's wrong, like all the colors out of you're a deer in the headlights. And so my husband, but not husband at the time, was like, are you okay? Or what's wrong? And I collapsed in his office, and you start crying and you're shaking and you're scared. And, I had already disclosed to some people, I'll get into that story after this story. So I'd already made some phone calls and disclosed to some past partners. And that didn't go necessarily well. And I was just feeling pretty bad. So my husband knew about it. We got together, I think like 4 years later.
Wow.
And when
so friends all that time, colleagues.
Right. Colleagues. Yeah. And when we ended up getting together, that was one of the conversations. I was like, hey, you remember that one day in the office? Like, you remember that, right? And he's like, yeah, no problem. I want to know more about it, but like, not a problem. I want to be with you. We had bigger fish to fry. We were colleagues. We had to go to HR. Like going to HR was a way bigger deal. And so we think that like herpes is the end all be all. Herpes should be the easiest, hardest conversation in a relationship. It was an uncomfortable conversation we had to have, but calling HR was way worse.
Was it? Did you keep your job? Did you guys both keep working there?
For a while. I stayed, like another year or something. And then, and then I left because
you were on a mission.
On a mission. Right.
Well, that was, So 2017 really sparked, I guess, the more public, all of that. Yes. Okay.
And I wasn't working for that company that, that probably wouldn't have gone over well. Right.
Yeah. Okay. that is that's a cool story because he was there in those moments, like literally in that moment when you were finding out.
Yeah. So,
okay.
But earlier I was saying, disclosing. So my best friend called me, or I can't remember again, either I called her or she called me right after I got the information that I had herpes. And she had some medical problems in the past. And she goes, the best thing I did was call people at that time as well. Because if you call them a month later and you're like, oh, I got herpes, I got diagnosed a month ago, but now I'm calling you to let you know, that person is like, well, dude, why did it take you a month? Or you know what I mean? Opposed to, I just found out, I don't know all the answers, but it was my responsibility to let you know. So because I was a peer educator for Planned Parenthood, I did know that herpes could have been dormant in my system for years. Right. And I knew that. So I went back pretty far and told people. And some of the guys were like, you're disgusting. And others were like, no problem. Like, can I do something for you? Like, do you want to go to dinner? Like, can I, not like, let's go to dinner,
yeah.
but like,
Right.
can I,
Just support.
yeah, like,
Yeah.
how are you? Can I, yeah. So that was interesting.
Wow. So you just, in those first couple of days, you
that day,
made those calls.
No, that day.
My God. That's really intense. Yes. And so, well, it seems like personality wise, clearly you're very outspoken. I don't know, just you. Yeah. And so that I keep going back to what your friend said, like, you need to share this publicly. I would just never dream of saying that to just any friend after finding this out. No. So there's something, she was seeing this side of you, and then also making those phone calls. So clearly you could do hard things.
Yeah.
And putting yourself out there, because I think that's the biggest thing is what are other people going to think? That stops, I think, a lot of us in our tracks. Mm-hmm. When ultimately it's actually going to make you.
Yeah. I mean, better. People are going to talk about you regardless.
Yeah, it's true.
And so you might as well do what you think is right and right at the time. Right. And I'm a big person on honesty. And I thought, gosh, if I was diagnosed with this, if it was reversed and someone I had dated, let's say a year ago, just got herpes, I would have appreciated the phone call to be like, hey, I don't think you have it. This is, we dated a year ago, but FYI, or it's hey, just be a little more careful next time or whatever.
Yes, definitely. Yeah. It's good to reverse it.
Yeah.
And what you would like. So what advice do you give people that, I mean, this could be in general, actually, when their life is going to change because of a diagnosis or something? What should a person do in that situation?
So number one, I like to say, educate yourself on it, because you probably didn't know that much about it before because it wasn't in your life. You know what I mean? Like, for example, I don't know that much about breast cancer. I know, right? Like I don't know that much about it. So like if someone's diagnosed with breast cancer or whatever, you would want to educate yourself on like, what is it? What is it not? What does it mean? Herpes. What does herpes mean? What does it not mean? You're not going to die. You're not like, your life isn't over. You can still have sex. You can still become a parent. You can still I had a vaginal birth. Like life is normal. So educate yourself. The next thing I would do is find a community that understands you. So whether that is your own personal community, but I would also like express to say, find a community that really is going through it. Because yes, your family or they might be there for you, but they're not going through it per se. So find a community that you can support yourself with and that is like you and gets you.
That's huge. And you created a community for that reason.
I did. I mean, remember back in 2011, let's go back there. There wasn't communities. Nobody talked about herpes. Yeah. You got a pamphlet from the doctor and here you go. And that's not really fair to the person being diagnosed. So yeah, I didn't want anyone to ever feel alone again or feel like I have questions or I asked my doctor, but they just kind of like shooed me out because it's not a big deal to them. And it's not a big deal medically. That is good news. Herpes is not a big deal.
Right. Yes.
Yeah.
It's true. Again, with all the stigma and stuff with it, I think that's the thing is in reality, it's something that isn't a big deal, but it is just the stigmas that come with it.
Right.
What does your online community look like?
So it has hundreds of people from all over the world. And what I love about it is the people are from all over the world. People from Germany, we'll have people from Japan, we'll have people from Australia, we'll have people from Brazil, we'll have, Canada, all over the world, and different cultures and different mindsets around herpes, yet we're all with it together. So we have different ages, all sorts of things. And it really has become a family. It's become friends. Like people have dated in the group. People can't wait People
That's
will,
cool.
we have, yeah, people have become
Yeah.
friends. They've gone on trips together. Um, so it really
Wow.
is a community, and like I'm a proud mama bear of that
Right.
community. So yeah,
Where can people find the community? Is it on Facebook or?
I didn't do Facebook.
Oh, okay.
Just again, yeah, a little more security, but you just go to lifewithherpes.com and you can find out
Okay.
more information. It's called the Secret Society, and you can join and yeah,
Meet lifelong
meet
friends and the love
lifelong
of your
friends.
life potentially.
Maybe.
That's
Yeah,
very
they're
cool.
like they are diagnosed with herpes, but they're happy people. Like I've noticed, I've gone on other
Hmm.
groups that are on Facebook or things like that, and they're like, they're not happy people. They're really stuck, or they just want to hook up, or like let's just smoke pot and drink,
Mm.
and like I'm like, no, we need to work through it,
Hmm.
work through this.
Right.
So
Yeah. So it's more connection on lifestyle and like uplifting each
exactly,
other and that kind of
yes.
thing. Okay.
Hmm.
And you're running that. You still
Uh-huh.
manage that
Oh yeah,
whole
yep,
community. Okay. So you're quite busy from what I see. You have a lot,
yes.
filming videos and podcasting and everything else. What is
A
a day in the
mommy,
life and a mom?
a day in the
Yes.
life, mommy,
Day in the
day
life.
in the life. I like to get up early and exercise so that I have something to
Hmm.
myself. I like to take bar classes. It's my favorite.
Oh,
And
love.
then my son and I, yeah, I love that.
Yeah.
My son and I usually go for a walk with our dog, our family dog. We usually do a walk of some sort or a run outside. And then we usually do an activity, which is like gymnastics or swimming. Um, and then around 10:30, I start Life with Herpes or whatever.
Hmm.
And I work on that. I'm recording, I'm filming, I'm creating content. I'm also in school.
Oh, wow. Just add one more thing. Why not?
Yeah, I don't know why I did that, but I'm working on my master's. So there's time with that as
Nice.
well. And then around like 3:30 and 4, I come back and I'm a mommy.
Hmm.
And my husband and son and I will go do something. I don't know, another walk or throw
Hmm.
rocks in a lake. I don't know. Hit golf
Yeah.
balls and
Sounds
eat
nice.
dinner and yeah, go to
Hmm.
bed and do it all over again.
Right. And so you're creating a lot of content for
Yes.
people. Is it mainly educational? What type of content?
Yes.
Hmm.
Yes.
Okay.
Educational. I wanted it to be when we looked at herpes or anything medically before, it was very sterile. It left you feeling very like sterile, or you're looking at like the almanac or something. It was
Hmm.
like, here's what it is. Um, and I didn't want that feeling. I wanted it to be more comforting, more like this is a real person, not an actor or a like
Hmm.
caricature of somebody that has herpes. So yeah, I want it's all educational. Sometimes it's funny. You have to make fun of it at
Hmm.
some point, but it's educational.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. What would you say you're the most proud of right now, up
Being
until
a
this point?
mom,
Mm-hmm.
being a mommy. Yeah. There's nothing in my, I didn't know if I wanted to be a mom, and my husband kind of talked me into it. And I was
Okay.
like, really? He's like, I really think you'll feel like you missed out. So it's been the best. Like, that's my proudest thing.
Mm-hmm. And
Mhm.
how old is he?
2.5.
Okay.
We're still
Cute.
new.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Toddler. And
Busy.
yes. And having this, again, you said you had easy natural birth and the whole thing. So
Yeah.
physically it didn't interfere that much.
Mm-mm.
Yeah.
It will only
Yeah.
interfere if you allow it,
Mm-hmm. I like that
you know?
concept. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
true.
Mm-hmm.
And what are you most looking forward to right now?
Probably most looking forward to be done with my master's, but no, I just enjoying life, like just continuing to go. Now I'm turning 40.
Mm-hmm.
So I moved through my 30s. I'm just looking forward to again being a better support system to people, um, being able to educate people more on it, not just this like the data on herpes, but how do we
Mm-hmm.
move through life? How do we navigate through life? How do we practice forgiveness? How do we practice responsibility? How do we navigate through other things in our life that, can be a better result.
Mm-hmm. Do you see doing this work ongoing?
Yeah, I think they'll always, I don't know, but I think that there'll always be like, this is Life with Herpes is my community, and I want to support people. So I think, yeah, some way or fashion, I will always have a hand in it. You're like, how are you? I'm also launching another business. A jewelry business. So I'm really excited about that
Very
too.
Cool.
But I think Life with Herpes will always have my soft spot. And yeah.
Your baby. So jewelry, making it, designing it.
Designing it. And my grandfather was a jeweler. So learning how to, my blood. Yeah.
Will it be online as well? Okay.
It will.
Very cool.
Yeah.
And so what would be the best way for people to find you, consume your content, work with you? Do you work one-on-one? Kind of a coaching type dynamic? Okay.
I do. The best, if it's herpes related, Life with Herpes. So anything Life with Herpes, whatever it is, if you're YouTube, if you're TikTok, if you're whatever you are, just go to Life with Herpes. And you can pretty much navigate through there and find whatever you're looking for blog posts, looking for videos, you're looking for whatever, looking for the community, you're looking for products. I have that. And if you want personal stuff of me being a mom and making banana bread or whatever, or my jewelry, you can just go to alexandraharbushka.com and you can navigate through that.
Okay. That's awesome. And the story thing is so like touching on that again, because I think in these moments when people have a devastating event, a diagnosis or something, like what advice would you give people that may not see the light right now? They are experiencing something horrible and how to transform that.
I would say that you're going to go down a journey. It's a journey you probably didn't want to go down, but you needed to go down. I'm faith-based, so I believe that it was like a message or something that God wanted you to like, this is who you are and you need to learn this and this is part of it. It's not a punishment. But be prepared to grow in a way that you weren't expecting to grow. And there's going to be some really positive things that come out of it.
I see you coaching people doing this too.
Yeah, I do.
In a way. But you do already?
Yeah.
Okay. Because I'm in your experience, again, sharing on these platforms and going to events and things like that. Do you hear all kinds of crazy stuff?
Yeah.
I would think so.
Absolutely. Yeah.
It's that vulnerability piece. People are
and it's great that people feel, they can open up to me about it, and great, let's work through it.
Right.
Yeah.
That's great. Thank you for sharing your story.
Yeah. Well, thank you for having me and walking through it. And I enjoyed it. I enjoyed talking about it.
Thank you. Me too. And how are you 40?
I know. I wonder that too.
Nice. You look incredible. I was like, you're 30.
Yeah, I know. Well, I am. I'm 39.
39. Yes.
39. But I turned 40 in like 2 months.
Okay.
So less.
It's all, I'm 43. I'm like, it's been the best. Well, I don't know. It's hard to judge, but I think the 40s are great, actually. And I hear that from people that are in their 50s. They're like, oh yeah, that was the best time.
Great.
So again, reinventing all the time.
Exactly.
Awesome. I will link all of your details in the show notes. And thanks again for sharing your story and being here and doing the work that you're doing.
Thank you. Yeah, I appreciate it. And I'm just excited to share the information so that nobody feels alone.
That brings us to the end of this episode. Thank you so much for being here. If you enjoy the show, please rate and review on Apple Podcasts. It makes a big difference for visibility. And even better, share this episode with a friend. And don't forget to subscribe so you never miss an episode every other Wednesday. If you're interested in working together to elevate your online presence, I'd love to hear from you. Reach out to me on Instagram at whereiswillow. I also hang out on LinkedIn, Willow McDonough. Until then, cheers to carving your own fucking path. I love you.